It was a calm, sun-drenched afternoon in the quiet suburban neighborhood where little Emma lived. The air was filled with the gentle hum of birds and the faint rustle of leaves swaying in a soft breeze. Emma, a curious toddler with wide, sparkling eyes and chubby hands, had wandered away from her backyard to explore the patch of muddy earth at the edge of the nearby park. Emma loved to play outside. To her, every leaf was a treasure, every stone a mystery waiting to be uncovered. Today was no different. With her tiny boots sinking into the wet soil, she toddled closer to the puddles left by the morning rain. Her chubby fingers reached out to poke at the squishy mud, delighting in the cool, sticky sensation. But then, something caught her attention. Small, wet, cold nose pressed gently against the mud just inches from her fingers. Emma blinked in surprise. She leaned forward, her tiny face inches away from the strange object. The nose twitched, and a pair of deep, soulful brown eyes met, hers filled with exhaustion and fear. The dog's head was barely above the thick, clinging mud that held her captive, her long ears drooping with weakness. Emma let out a surprised cry, a mix of curiosity and alarm that echoed through the neighborhood like a tiny alarm bell. Her voice carried on the breeze, reaching the ears of Mrs. Thompson, her next-door neighbor, who was tending her rose bushes nearby. Without hesitation, Mrs. Thompson hurried toward the sound, calling out, "Emma? What is it, sweetheart?" Emma pointed toward the muddy patch with her pudgy hand, still fixated on the desperate animal barely visible beneath the mud. Mrs. Thompson's heart stopped for a moment as she took in the scene. The German Shepherd's fur was matted and soaked, eyes wide and pleading, and her belly swollen in unmistakable pregnancy. She was trapped, her legs buried deep beneath the muddy earth, struggling to free herself but failing with every desperate movement. Within moments, other neighbors gathered. Mr. Patel with his strong hands, young Lucas who had once worked at a local animal shelter, and even a few teenagers who heard the commotion while skateboarding nearby. The group stood around the dog, assessing the situation with urgency and growing worry. "She's stuck," Lucas said quietly, kneeling beside the dog and gently brushing the thick mud off her face. The dog whimpered softly, pain and exhaustion mixing in her eyes. "She can't get out on her own," Mrs. Thompson added, her voice trembling. "And she's pregnant. We need to help her. Now." The mud clung to the dog like a heavy trap, making every movement a Herculean effort. The neighbors quickly formed a plan. They gathered shovels and old boards to create a makeshift path and began carefully digging around the dog, mindful not to hurt her or disturb the precious life growing inside her. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the field, but their determination was unwavering. Emma sat on a nearby log, watching with wide eyes, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny to her chest. She couldn't understand the danger, but she felt the urgency in the grown-ups' voices. Every so often, she reached out a hand, wanting to comfort the trembling dog. Minutes felt like hours as the neighbors worked tirelessly, voices calm but urgent. Finally, with a combined heave, they managed to pull the exhausted German Shepherd free from the thick mud. She collapsed onto the grass, panting heavily, her body trembling but alive. Tears welled up in Mrs. Thompson's eyes as she gently stroked the dog's fur. "You're safe now," she whispered. "We'll take care of you." Emma crawled closer, her face lighting up as the dog turned weakly to nuzzle her tiny hand. The baby had found more than a dirty patch of mud. She had found a life clinging to hope, a story about to unfold that would touch everyone around her in ways no one could imagine. The air was thick with tension as the neighbors gathered around. The exhausted German Shepherd, her heavy breaths rattling in her chest. Her dark eyes flickered with pain and confusion, the mud clinging to her fur still damp, evidence of her near-fatal ordeal. She was breathing, but barely, and inside her swollen belly the life of several puppies pulsed with fragile hope. Mrs. Thompson's voice was steady but urgent as she spoke to the group. "We have to get her to the vet. She's too weak to move on her own, and those puppies, they need her." Lucas nodded, already pulling out his phone. "There's a 24-hour clinic a few miles from here. I'll call and let them know we're coming." Emma's mother, Anna, arrived hurriedly, worry etched on her face. "Is she okay?" she asked, kneeling beside her daughter, who was still holding the dog's muddy paw as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "We're getting her help," Mrs. Thompson assured. "But she's in bad shape, and she's pregnant, probably close to giving birth." Anna's face tightened, and she gently lifted Emma, calming the toddler with soft words. "We'll be at the vet soon," she promised, cradling Emma close. The journey to the vet was tense and silent. The dog lay on a blanket in the back seat of Mr. Patel's truck, her body limp but her eyes alert. Every bump in the road seemed to jolt the fragile life inside her. The group rode along, hearts pounding with hope and fear. At the veterinary clinic, a flurry of activity awaited them. The receptionist quickly alerted Dr. Ramos, an experienced vet known for his skill and compassion with difficult cases. The team rushed the German Shepherd into the treatment room as Lucas relayed the dog's story. How a baby had found her buried in the mud, how neighbors had pulled her free, and how her condition was critical. Dr. Ramos knelt beside the dog, his hands gentle as he examined her swollen belly and the dried mud crusting her fur. "She's severely dehydrated, exhausted, and in shock," he explained to the group, "and the puppies are still inside, but they're at risk if the mother doesn't stabilize quickly." A hush fell over the room. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the dog, silent prayers hanging in the air. "We're going to start IV fluids and oxygen," Dr. Ramos said. "But it's a race against time. The stress she's been through could trigger early labor or worse." Anna held Emma close, tears slipping down her cheeks. The baby's innocent discovery had turned into a desperate fight for survival. As the vet worked, Lucas stayed by the dog's side, whispering soothing words. "You're safe now. We're going to help you and your puppies. You're not alone." Tabalo, dog's breathing grew steadier, but her eyes showed lingering pain. The team knew this was only the beginning of a long, uncertain road. Hours passed as the dog received care. The vet monitored her closely, ready to act at the first sign of labor or distress. Meanwhile, word spread through the neighborhood, and more people arrived with donations, blankets, food, and supplies to help care for the mother and her soon-to-be-born puppies. Emma, still too young to understand the gravity, sat quietly by her mother's side, clutching her stuffed bunny. She reached out occasionally, her small hand brushing the dog's muddy fur as if offering silent comfort. Outside the clinic, neighbors took turns waiting and watching, their faces etched with worry and hope. The story of the pregnant German shepherd stuck in the mud had captured their hearts and sparked a collective determination to save this mother and her unborn puppies. Dr. Ramos returned with cautious optimism. "She's stable for now," he said. "But the next 24 hours will be critical. If the puppies don't arrive soon, we may need to perform an emergency C-section." The group nodded, understanding the stakes. They were all holding their breath, waiting for a miracle to unfold. In that quiet room, with machines beeping softly and the dog resting in fragile peace, the bond between the baby who found her and the community who rallied to save her was already forming, one built on hope, resilience, and an unspoken promise to protect life no matter the cost. The clinic's fluorescent lights hummed softly as the pregnant German shepherd lay on a soft blanket in a quiet corner of the treatment room. Tubes and wires connected her to the machines that monitored every heartbeat and breath. Though the dog was physically still, the tension in the air was anything but calm. Dr. Ramos moved quickly but carefully, checking her vital signs and making notes. The mother's swollen belly rose and fell with shallow breaths, and deep inside, the unborn puppies were a flicker of life, tiny heartbeats synchronized with their mothers. Outside the treatment room, the waiting area buzzed with whispered conversations. Neighbors who had gathered to help shared worried looks, their eyes heavy with hope and fear. Mrs. Thompson paced slowly, clutching Emma's small hand as the toddler sat quietly in Anna's arms, her wide eyes searching the faces around her. "It's hard to believe a baby found her," Mrs. Thompson said softly. "It's like a miracle." Anna nodded, her voice thick with emotion. "Emma doesn't understand, but she's already formed a connection with that dog. It's like she knows. They need each other." Lucas, who had been at the clinic since the dog's arrival, shared a quiet smile. "It's incredible how life works sometimes. A baby's discovery turned into a community effort to save two families, the dog and her puppies, and the people who care." Just then, Dr. Ramos emerged from the treatment room. His face was serious, but not without a glimmer of hope. "She's stable for now," he said, addressing the small group. "The fluids and oxygen are helping, but her condition is still fragile. We're monitoring the puppies closely. If labor begins naturally, we'll be ready to assist. But if complications arise, we may have to perform a cesarean to save both mother and pups." The words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Everyone exchanged worried glances. This was no ordinary rescue. It was a race against time, against nature, against every obstacle that had already stacked against this brave dog. Back inside the treatment room, the dog stirred slightly. She opened her eyes, weak but aware. Lucas leaned close, his voice gentle. "You're safe here. We won't let anything happen to you or your babies." The dog's ears twitched, and she managed a soft whimper. It was as if she understood. The hours that followed were filled with silent prayers and occasional updates from Dr. Ramos. Emma, growing tired but still drawn to the dog, often reached out to touch the blanket covering her. It was a simple gesture of comfort, a fragile bridge between two lives connected by fate. Late into the evening, as the clinic grew quieter and the city lights flickered beyond the windows, the dog's breathing became more labored. Dr. Ramos and his team prepared for the possibility of an emergency procedure. "We're seeing early signs of labor," the vet explained to the anxious group. "If things progress naturally, we'll assist her, but we're ready to step in if necessary." Outside, the neighbors rallied. Messages of support flooded social media, spreading the story far beyond the small neighborhood. Animal lovers everywhere held their breath, hoping for a miracle. Then, the moment came. The dog's body tensed and the first puppy arrived, a tiny, wet bundle of life, struggling to take its first breath. Tears welled in Mrs. Thompson's eyes as the vet gently cleaned and warmed the newborn. But the relief was short-lived. The mother's strength was waning, and the remaining puppies were slow to come. Dr. Ramos made a quick decision. "We need to perform a C-section," he said firmly. "It's the only way to save the rest." The team worked swiftly, the room a blur of focused energy and skilled hands. Emma watched quietly from her mother's arms, unaware of the drama, unfolding, but somehow sensing its importance. Minutes later, the vet held up the last puppy, a tiny, fragile miracle. One by one, the puppies were cleaned and placed next to their mother, who was still weak but alive. As the night deepened, the exhausted dog rested, surrounded by her newborns and the people who had saved her. The race had been won, for now, but the journey was far from over. The quiet hum of the veterinary clinic was filled with a new kind of energy, one of cautious relief and fragile hope. The German shepherd, once buried deep in mud and fighting for her life, now lay on a thick blanket surrounded by her newborn puppies. Her heavy breaths came slower but steady, and the tiny pups nestled close to her, their soft whimpers filling the room. Dr. Ramos wiped sweat from his brow and allowed himself a brief smile. "She's stable," he told the gathered neighbors and family. "The surgery went well and the puppies are healthy, but she's still very weak, and the next few days will be critical." Mrs. Thompson, who had been quietly holding Emma for hours, looked down at the toddler who was now staring at the puppies with wide, curious eyes. Emma's face lit up with wonder, her tiny fingers reaching out toward the soft fur as if to confirm these little creatures were real. "Puppies," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Anna smiled softly. "She's already formed a bond," she said, brushing Emma's hair back gently. "I think she knows those puppies are special." The community had rallied around the dog from the moment Emma's cries had pierced the afternoon air. Donations of food, blankets, and toys had poured in. Volunteers offered to help care for the dog and her litter, ensuring they would never be left wanting. A local animal rescue group even contacted the clinic, offering to assist with long-term care once the dog was well enough. Back in the quiet treatment room, the dog's eyes fluttered open. Her gaze met Lucas's gentle smile, and she responded with a weak wag of her tail. It was a small victory, but it meant the world. The dog's story began to spread beyond the neighborhood's borders. Posts on social media shared photos of her. Muddy rescue and newborn puppies, drawing thousands of messages from strangers moved by the tale. People offered support, shared their own rescue stories, and sent prayers for the dog and her family. As days passed, the dog, whom the neighbors had named Hope, began to regain strength. The swelling in her legs subsided, and she stood shakily on wobbly legs for the first time since her rescue. Emma visited every day, bringing her stuffed bunny and sitting quietly beside Hope, her presence a calming force. One afternoon, as Emma played gently with one of the puppies, Hope nudged her softly, recognizing the child who had found her in the mud. The bond between them was undeniable, a silent promise of trust and love. Despite the joy, there were still challenges. Hope's appetite was slow to return, and her energy levels fluctuated. The vet's visits became frequent, with Dr. Ramos closely monitoring both mother and pups, but the community's support never wavered. Mrs. Thompson organized a small fundraiser to help cover medical expenses, while Anna shared updates online, keeping everyone connected to the dog's journey. The story of survival, resilience, and compassion resonated deeply, inspiring many to take action in their own neighborhoods. For Emma's family, the experience had been transformative. What began as a simple afternoon of play had turned into a life-changing event that brought strangers together and created a lasting bond between a child and a dog. Hope's recovery became a symbol, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, kindness and courage could light the way. And as the puppies grew stronger, so did the promise of a new beginning for all of them. The road ahead was still long, but for the first time in weeks, the future looked bright. Days turned into weeks, and Hope's transformation was nothing short of miraculous. What once was a frightened, mud-covered German shepherd fighting for survival was now a proud, gentle mother nurturing a litter of 5 lively puppies. The tiny pups, once fragile and quiet, now tumbled over each other, their playful yips filling the small room with life and energy. Emma was their constant companion. Every day she arrived with her mother Anna and the softest smile for Hope and her growing family. The toddler's tiny hands learned how to gently stroke the puppy's fur, how to cup a little paw in her palm without squeezing, and how to whisper comforting words that seemed to calm even the most restless pups. The bond between Emma and Hope deepened with each visit. Hope would nuzzle Emma's cheek softly, her eyes full of gratitude and affection. It was clear that the dog had never forgotten the tiny hand that had reached for her in the mud that fateful day. Mrs. Thompson and Lucas had taken on the responsibility of organizing care for Hope and her puppies. A cozy room in Mrs. Thompson's home had been set up as a temporary nursery, with soft blankets and plenty of space for the pups to explore as they grew. The neighborhood volunteers pitched in regularly, ensuring that Hope received proper nutrition and veterinary care. But just as the atmosphere brimmed with joy, a shadow of concern began to creep in. One morning, Dr. Ramos arrived with a grave expression. "Hope's recovery has been remarkable," he said gently, "but I've noticed some signs of weakness in her back legs. It could be lingering effects from her time trapped in the mud or something neurological. We need to run more tests." The news was a blow to the group. They had come so far, but the road was not yet clear of obstacles. Emma's mother, Anna, squeezed her daughter's hand tightly, trying to hold back her worry. "She's strong," Anna whispered, "and she's fighting. We'll get through this." The tests confirmed Dr. Ramos's concerns. Hope was experiencing nerve damage that could affect her mobility long term. The vet laid out a treatment plan involving physical therapy and special care, but there were no guarantees. The community's response was immediate and overwhelming. Fundraisers were organized to cover Hope's rehabilitation costs. Physical therapy experts offered advice and volunteer help. Emma's family committed to being by Hope's side every step of the way. Hope, ever the resilient spirit, seemed to understand the urgency. Despite her weakness, she tried to stand and walk, leaning on the support of the people who loved her. Emma cheered her on with clapping hands and bright eyes, as if her small encouragement could fuel Hope's strength. Meanwhile, the puppies grew stronger and more adventurous. Their playful antics brought laughter and lightness into what could have been a heavy time. Each pup found a loving home, adopted by members of the community who had followed the story from the beginning. For Emma, these daily visits to see Hope and the puppies became a cherished routine. She learned about responsibility, compassion, and the power of community. What started as a simple moment of discovery had blossomed into a profound lesson about love and resilience. One afternoon, as Hope attempted to walk with the aid of a special harness, Emma toddled alongside her, holding the leash with a determined grip. "You can do it, Hope," she said in her soft, confident voice. Hope's eyes met Emma's, and in that silent exchange was a promise of friendship, survival, and new beginnings. The journey was far from over, but Hope's spirit was unbreakable. And with Emma and the community by her side, there was nothing she couldn't face. Hope's days became a delicate balance between progress and struggle. The once vibrant German Shepherd who had battled to survive now faced a new challenge, relearning how to move. The nerve damage from being trapped in the mud had weakened her back legs, making even simple steps a painful effort. Dr. Ramos had prescribed a strict regimen of physical therapy, including gentle exercises, hydrotherapy, and massage. Each session was a test of Hope's willpower. Sometimes she would falter, her eyes clouded with frustration, but just as often she would push through the pain, her tail wagging with determination. Emma and her family were unwavering in their support. The little girl became Hope's tiny cheerleader, her presence a source of comfort and motivation. Emma would sit by the dog's side, stroking her fur gently, whispering encouraging words she didn't fully understand, but instinctively knew were needed. One rainy afternoon, Lucas arrived at Mrs. Thompson's home with a surprise, a specially designed dog wheelchair that would support Hope's back legs and give her more freedom to move. It was a gift from a local animal rescue group, inspired by the story of the dog and the baby who had saved her. The first time Hope was fitted with the wheelchair, she was hesitant. The contraption felt strange and heavy. But as Lucas gently guided her, she began to move forward, the familiar joy of running flickering in her eyes. Emma clapped with delight. "Go, Hope! You're doing it!" Hope's progress was slow but steady. With every step, her confidence grew. The neighborhood watched with admiration as this dog, once buried and broken, became a symbol of resilience and hope. Yet challenges persisted. There were days when Hope would refuse to eat, overwhelmed by fatigue or pain. The worry etched deeper into the faces of those who loved her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma sat beside Hope's bed, holding her paw. "Please be strong," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We all need you." Hope's eyes, filled with warmth and trust, met Emma's, and in that moment, the bond between them felt unbreakable. The community rallied even more fiercely. A local physical therapist volunteered to help with Hope's rehabilitation, offering sessions at no cost. Neighbors took turns assisting Mrs. Thompson in caring for Hope, sharing stories and laughter that lightened the heavy days. Meanwhile, the puppies, now thriving in their new homes, sent waves of joy back to the family who had cared for their mother. Pictures and updates flooded social media, reminding everyone of the ripple effect one rescue had created. Through it all, Emma learned lessons that extended far beyond childhood innocence. She saw firsthand the power of kindness, the strength in vulnerability, and the incredible impact a community could have when united by compassion. One bright morning, Hope surprised everyone. With Lucas's gentle encouragement and the support of her wheelchair, she took several strong, steady steps across the garden. Cheers erupted around her, tears streaming down faces filled with pride. Emma ran alongside her, laughing with pure joy. "You did it, Hope! You're a hero!" Hope's journey was far from over, but that day marked a turning point, a testament to the power of love, patience, and unwavering faith in second chances. As the sun bathed the neighborhood in golden light, Hope rested with her puppies close by, surrounded by the people who had become her family. The rescue that began with a baby's discovery had blossomed into a story of survival and hope that would be remembered for years to come. Hope's recovery had become more than just a medical journey. It had grown into a story of connection, healing, and transformation for an entire neighborhood. What started with a desperate rescue had blossomed into a movement of kindness that touched every heart. Mrs. Thompson's home had become a hub of activity and hope. Volunteers came daily to help care for Hope and her puppies, bringing not only supplies but laughter and encouragement. The neighborhood's children learned about compassion firsthand, their eyes wide with wonder as they watched Emma and Hope grow stronger together. Emma herself was changing. The tiny toddler who had once only known the simple joys of play now understood responsibility and empathy in ways few children her age ever would. She had become Hope's steadfast friend, accompanying her on every therapy session, talking to her in a soft voice that seemed to make the dog's eyes sparkle. One afternoon, as Emma sat on the porch swing, Hope rested at her feet, a contented sigh escaping her. Anna, watching the scene, smiled and whispered, "This little girl has given Hope a new chance at life." Lucas, standing nearby, nodded. "And Hope has given this whole community something precious, a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness can change the world." The story of Hope and the baby who found her had rippled beyond the neighborhood. Local newspapers ran articles, and a small charity reached out, inspired by the rescue, offering to help fund continued care and support. Messages of hope and gratitude poured in from strangers who felt touched by the tale of survival. As Hope's strength returned, she began to explore the garden again, her wheelchair making it possible to roam freely. Emma ran beside her, laughter ringing through the air. Their bond was unbreakable, a testament to the power of love and resilience. But amidst the joy, the community faced a new challenge. The old park where Emma and other children played was in need of repair. A place that once seemed ordinary, but had become a symbol of togetherness and healing. Mrs. Thompson proposed a neighborhood project to restore the park, turning it into a safe haven not only for children, but for animals like Hope and her puppies. The idea sparked enthusiasm, bringing neighbors together in planning and fundraising. Emma, holding Hope's leash, watched as neighbors planted flowers, repaired benches, and painted bright murals. She clapped her hands in delight, proud to be part of something bigger than herself. One evening, as the sun set over the newly transformed park, the community gathered for a small celebration. Children played, dogs ran freely, and neighbors shared stories of hope and renewal. Mrs. Thompson raised a glass. To Hope, Emma, and to every one of us who believed in second chances. May this park remind us that even after the darkest times, life can bloom again. Hope lay nearby, her eyes reflecting the warm glow of the gathering. Puppies played at her side, and Emma nestled close, their hearts forever entwined. The rescue that began with a baby's cry and a dog buried in mud had become a lasting legacy, a story of courage, compassion, and the unbreakable bonds that can grow when people come together. As night fell, Emma whispered softly to Hope, "Thank you for being my friend." Hope's gentle nuzzle was the only reply she needed. The months that followed marked a new chapter, not just for Hope and her puppies, but for the entire neighborhood that had come together around their story. The rescue, once a moment of crisis, had transformed into a celebration of life, resilience, and community spirit. Hope was no longer the fragile dog who had been buried in mud, gasping for breath. She was strong, full of life, and walking steadily, with the help of her wheelchair. The nerve damage hadn't disappeared completely, but Hope's determination and the love surrounding her made every step a victory. Emma, now a little older and wiser, remained her faithful companion. Each day, they explored the park, the same one the community had restored, where children laughed, puppies played, and neighbors gathered. The park had become a symbol of hope, healing, and the power of kindness. One sunny afternoon, Emma sat beneath a blooming tree, Hope resting beside her. The dog's eyes, bright and full of trust, met Emma's gaze. In that silent moment, it was clear they shared a bond that would last a lifetime. Anna, watching from nearby, felt tears prick her eyes. "It's incredible," she said softly. "How one small act, Emma finding hope, changed so many lives." Mrs. Thompson joined her, smiling. "And how that act reminded us all of something important, that no one is ever truly alone." Puppies, now happy and healthy in their new homes, often visited. Each reunion was filled with joyful barking, wagging tails, and the warmth of family. Though Hope's role had shifted from nursing mother to loving guardian, her heart remained full. Local media continued to share updates, and a small foundation was established in Hope's name, dedicated to rescuing and rehabilitating animals in need. The community's generosity and care inspired others to get involved, spreading the message far beyond their little neighborhood. Emma's parents were amazed by the transformation, not just in Hope, but in their daughter. "She's learned so much about empathy and kindness," Anna said proudly. "This experience has shaped her in ways we never expected." One evening, as the neighborhood gathered for a quiet celebration under twinkling lights, Emma stood on a small stage with Hope beside her. With shy confidence, she spoke to the crowd. "I found hope in the mud," Emma said softly, "and she showed me that even when things seem scary, there's always hope. We can all help each other, just like Hope and me." The applause was warm and heartfelt. Tears glistened on many faces, touched by the simple truth in Emma's words. Hope rested her head gently on Emma's lap, her eyes closing in peaceful contentment. The journey from fear and struggle to joy and belonging was complete. As the evening wound down, neighbors lingered, sharing stories and smiles. The baby who had discovered a dog buried in mud had sparked a wave of compassion that would ripple through their lives forever. Hope's story was no longer just about survival. It was about thriving together. And as Emma and Hope walked home, under the stars, the promise of new beginnings shone brighter than ever.